You seeing the PowerPoint now, Miguel?
I see it, sir.
Excellent. Okay, good evening, folks. This is Andy Pedraza with Special Effects Academy on the start of the week session for April 28th of 2019. We will, of course, go through our regular agenda, take a look at the prior week's results, our currency strength meter for the past month and the past week, any fundamental announcements on the calendar for this week to come, an analysis of the charts of some of the major pairs on the daily, any setups we see in progress, and a few words in conclusion. We'll start out with our ledgers. The long-term account has had no activity this year. We just haven't seen any good long-term opportunity as yet. So it is blank. The intermediate account did have movement, actually a quite significant movement this week. We had some big winners. We had some big losers as well. Overall, we did recover somewhat from a loss that we had sustained in past weeks. So the account is a little bit better off right now than it was at the beginning of last week, but still a ways to go. We are carrying one open trade with the euro dollar short, currently at a little bit of a loss, but we'll see how the week kicks off. The noteworthy activity on the account was, of course, the Aussie weakness, where we managed Aussie and Kiwi weakness, where we managed to pick up quite a nice bit of pips. We were doing well with the euro trades as well, but we did have a turnaround sometime during the week, and most of our euro trades went negative at that time, and we did get taken out at a loss on those. So the wins were slightly larger than the losses, so all in all positive, but still not as good a week as it could have been. So this is where the account is right now on the intermediate. And on the short term, also a lot of activity. Didn't go as well for us. We did sustain a loss for the week, but it wasn't a big loss, about 2% on the off the balance starting out the week, and a very small dollar loss, a little bit under $40. So that's where we're at with the accounts. Of course, you all do have access to the different ledgers, so you can review this at any point. Don't wait on me to give the reviews at the end or start of the week. You always have access to the latest information in the ledgers. But this is your chance, of course, to ask any questions or make any comments at any point during this presentation. Notes and opportunities for improvement. Well, we've had lots of volatility in the market. We have used some of that to our advantage. The only one where we got caught with our hands in the cookie jar was with the euro turnaround, and that is unavoidable. Sometimes that will happen. Reasonably flat week on the short term, as we just reviewed, and also as reviewed a good recovery on the intermediate term account. Relative strength meter for the past 30 days and the past week. I'm really not going to focus on the past 30 days, other than to note that volatility has gone down very slightly since last week. But on the weekly, we can see that there are some directions being established, and we'll just have to see if they continue and become full-fledged trends. The Aussie in particular was the big loser last week, and we did take advantage of the bulk of that move, so that was good. The Canadian still remains pretty middle of the pack. It wins some, it loses some. The Swiss has also not had a good showing for a while. It's at its weakest, and I should have mentioned that as well. A lot of our profit came from going short on the Swiss franc, which means trading those USD CHF and Euro CHF trades up into Swiss weakness. That also added a nice chunk of profit. But we can see that it still managed to hang on to its own for the week against the pound, the euro, and the Aussie. We took some profit on the Euro Swiss, but that was on a much older trade, which indeed started going against us at some point during the week, and we did exit at profit as we saw that the turnaround was happening. More importantly, against the U.S., it's just collapsing, and has gone, as we'll see in the charts when we take a look at them, is at its weakest in quite a few years right now. The euro, of course, no need to say it again. You can see there in the chart how badly it weakened against everybody except the Australian. The pound also had a poor week, and we also traded the pound down on a few pairs, or tried to, and it lost ground against everybody except the euro and the Australian. The yen was the big winner, gained ground against everybody else. The Kiwi was a loser until it started turning around. So it ended the week a little bit mixed. It lost ground against the yen and the dollar, gained against everybody else. The dollar, a clear winner. The dollar made grounds against everybody except the yen. And last but not least, the metals also started doing a nice little recovery week with silver and gold both gaining on everybody else, much as they did, much as they have for the last 30 days as well. Silver and gold have gained against everybody except the dollar in the past 30 days. And even with the dollar, it's pretty much a flat trade. It wasn't a deep move against the metals. Fundamental announcements for this week that is kicking off. We're going to have a pretty busy week. So we have quite a lot of things on the calendar that we are going to be trading live. And there is a good opportunity for some decent movements. We have the employment numbers coming out of New Zealand Tuesday evening. So those will be traded live. I don't expect that to be a big mover, but you never know, especially when there's been a lot of whipsawing with the Australian and the Kiwi in the last couple of weeks. So anything might set it off. We'll be trading that one live. But more importantly, on Wednesday, we're going to have the monthly Fed interest rate decision coming out, as well as the monetary policy statement and a press conference half an hour later. So we'll be trading all that live. Of course, given the hour, that is going to be happening at the same time as our regular 2 p.m. session. So they will be combined. We'll probably start about a half an hour early at the 1:30 mark, and just go into our regular trading plus the fundamental at the top of the hour. Thursday, early in the morning, 7 a.m. my time, is going to be the Bank of England interest rate decision. And of course, with Brexit being high on everybody's mind, this one has a good potential to move the pound pairs. There is no expectation that they will change the interest rate, but the speech that follows could indeed be what moves the pound pairs to some degree. And of course, if they do have a surprise and actually change the rate, that would pretty much put the pound into overdrive in one direction or another. And last but not least, as usual, first Friday of every month, we have our non-farm payroll coming out of the U.S. This time, we won't have the Canadians with us. They have a slightly different schedule. I think if the first Friday happens late enough in the month, they will do it the first Friday. If not, they push it off to the second Friday. So since Friday is only the 3rd of the month, that means they will be having theirs on Friday the 10th. So we'll have the Canadian funding a week after our regular non-farm payroll. And with that, we are going to move into the charts. We can see here on this one that oil has finally done a significant retrace. It's gone out of the trend line. That might be very short-lived. I mean, it's not the first time it's broken that trend line and then popped back up, but it might be showing a little signs of overextension. And I did say last week that it's going up a little bit too fast. I mean, I'm happy it's gone up. It was the direction I had a bias on to begin with, but I think it did it a little bit too quickly, and it's overdue for some retrace before it continues in the same direction. Now, as it strengthened along all this time, the CAD, the Canadian dollar, didn't get any significantly stronger throughout. And we'll see if the collapse of oil price, even though it might be temporary, if that has any effect on the Canadian, since when it was going in the opposite direction, it really didn't. So time will tell. We'll take a look this week and see what happens. And moving on to the currencies. We have our euro dollar continues to trade very poorly against the euro. So this is going into dollar strength. It's broken out of the prior level of resistance, though it is still following the descending channel. We do have a breakout, though, and that is why I opened that intermediate term account trade, because we do have a breakout, a 20-day breakout, which is a significant event. In fact, this one's a 50-day breakout as well. So we're short on this one, and we will remain short for the duration. We're going to be writing this one out. Pound dollar also heading down, and we took some profit. We took some profit out of this pound dollar collapse, and we'll likely be getting back into it at some point. It did start retracing late in the week, Thursday and Friday, and we took our profit and got out of those trades. USD JPY again making a nice bullish trend line, so it finally seems to be gaining a little bit of activity, though it did go back on the last day or two of the week. We saw those bearish candles, and the last one, Friday's, a very indecisive one with a very long wick, which is probably indicative that this still has some room to go towards the top, at least from a technical analysis perspective, a TA point of view. It seems to have found support there at the 111.50 and may indeed continue heading up. USD Canadian, there's not a whole lot I can say about the USD CAD. It really didn't want to move at all when oil was getting stronger. We'll see if it goes in the opposite direction now that oil has shown a little bit of weakness after months of bullish activity. So I'm not going to be trying to predict it. Well, I never try to predict, but in this case, I'm not even going to have an opinion. I'm just going to wait to see what the USD CAD does and try to trade it in whatever direction it picks. USD Swiss, I said it before, complete breakout. We did go long on the Swiss pairs and made quite a chunk of change. We got out towards the end of the week as it started flattening and even doing a bit of retrace. And of course, the Euro Swiss did a much deeper retrace, not because of the Swiss moving, but the Euro losing strength. In the case of the USD Swiss, we will probably, or at least I will probably try to get in again long if it starts moving, but I'll also be a little bit careful and make sure that it hasn't tapped out the move. Whatever you can say about the USD Swiss, it has done a significant breakout. That is a bullish breakout, and there's no reason for it not to continue heading up at this point. So again, a time will tell scenario. We'll be keeping an eye on this one. Aussie dollar, it broke out of the most recent low, but not the overall low of the chart. It did have a lot of bearish activity and only a bit of retrace towards the end of the week. We did get out. We had some nice profit, and we figured we'd take it as it went back more than the 40 pips I'd set as a trailing stop. So I'm not sorry that happened. Of course, I would have been happier if it kept going down, but we did make in excess of 100 pips on some of these Aussie and New Zealand trades. So that was definitely a good week. We'll see if it continues heading down, which is my bias in this case, and we can jump in again at a decent price point. Kiwi dollar, same thing, but a much deeper retrace Thursday and Friday. So we can see that everything it gave up during the week. It almost but not quite made up Thursday and Friday. So a very flat week for the Kiwi dollar, though it had a very, very sharp drop that, again, we took advantage of and got out as it started retracing. Aussie Canadian, this is a very tough one to read since the Canadian has been acting contrarian and the Aussie has been weakening. So we see the Aussie drop, but also towards the end of the week, it tried to do a recovery, and then that recovery failed, and it ended up the week very near the bottom. So we did have either more Aussie weakness or some Canadian strength coming into play. Really not sure which. Anyway, it was a very indecisive end of week for the Aussie CAD. Euro Swiss, and I mentioned this before, this was probably the most bullish of all the Swiss charts. It was just going up, up, up with no retrace at all. Finally, something clicked, and the Euro weakened, and we see that very significant retrace. Another one where we took profit, not as much as we could have given the retrace, but still we made a decent amount of pips on this one, and I think we've been writing it for a couple of weeks as well. So I think we took profit twice on this one. I forget, but either way, it was a very nice bullish move, and we'll have to see how the week kicks off because, well, as regards to Swiss, at this point, I don't see any signs of strength coming out of the Swiss. So this might be one of those where it just goes right back to the top, and that is a very decent amount of pips right there to be had. Euro pound, still flat, still indecisive, still wavering. I had a pending order to go long on this one. It never quite hit the trigger, and I canceled it towards the end of the week. So we'll look for another opportunity on this one, but it is very, very iffy. Just doesn't seem to want to pick a direction. Euro JPY, well, the euro collapsed. That's something we can't deny. So yen weakness across the board, but in this case, it was yen strength that won out today, as both currencies were weakening, but the euro was weakening quicker. It did not break out. It's still hanging out within the parameters of the sideways movement it's been in for a while, but it is showing a an attempt to break out. So we have an intermediate low there about the 124.30, 25, 124.25 is where we have the most recent level of support. It's pretty much where price is at. And then about 100 pips lower, we have the prior support. And that would be the one I'd like to see it break. But again, that depends on continued euro weakness, and we don't know that that's going to happen. So we'll just have to wait and see. Euro Canadian, another one of those that goes in both directions, as both currencies seem to be weakening at different times. And as such, I'm in no rush to trade this one. Pound JPY, we made profit on Pound JPY throughout the course of the week, and I did start doing a retrace on Friday. We took our profit and ran. We'll have to see how the week kicks off. I am in general bearish on the pound, so I would like to trade these down. But I also want to wait for the movements to actually begin happening before I jump in. Right now, it's sitting almost exactly on a level of significant support, so we'll have to wait and see. Aussie JPY also, well, it broke the trend line, so it did make a bearish movement, mostly on Aussie weakness. But at the same time, we don't have a breakout. We don't have a new low. It's still trading in between the two sideways. So we'll keep an eye on it for a while. Euro New Zealand, it's finally broken that bullish trend line, so we may see an opportunity to go short on the Euro New Zealand. If it wasn't for the New Zealand weakening at the same time as the Euro, this one would already be at the bottom. So we'll have to see if the New Zealand has enough strength to overcome its prior weakness and get the top here. This is another one where we've got in excess of 400 pips to be had there on a good move. So definitely keep an eye on this one. Pound Canadian, both of them weakening, neither one of them getting the upper hand. So another one I'd like to trade down, but the CAD has just been very disappointing in that it has refused to move with oil price. So we'll wait and see. And of course, the Pound Swiss, another one where both currencies are weakening, and neither one seems to be gaining the upper hand in the past few weeks. Overall, the pound definitely has the upper hand. This one is trading very near the top of its range. So we'll see if there's an opportunity here, but so far I haven't been seeing one. And that's it. Those are our charts. So setups in progress for the week. The pound pairs, as I mentioned before, no significant movement. Not that they haven't weakened. The pound has weakened, but I haven't seen that deep weakening that should have taken some of these pairs all the way to the bottom. So I'm still waiting for that. Euro weakness remains evident, of course, so we'll have to factor that in and see what the week brings. The Canadian pairs, they've been contrarian for a while regarding oil, and now oil has retraced significantly. So let's see whether the Canadian actually responds to that or actually ignores it and goes in the opposite direction again. Japan, and I mentioned this last week in some of my emails, we have Golden Week in Japan right now. That is it's not their version of Easter or whatever, because it's not that kind of a holiday, but it is a week that the Japanese get off every year. And on top of that, they have the coronation of a new emperor this week. So instead of being a week off, it's going to be like 10 days off. And this does paralyze Japan, and of course that paralyzes the yen. So I would be very careful with any yen trading, because not only might it not be worthwhile in the sense that it will simply stay flat, but you may also be the victim of flash crashes or other temporary movements created by computers who probably don't have Golden Week factored in. And well, stuff may happen. I would be very careful trading the yen. And last but not least, Australia, the Aussie pairs have weakened yet again, sometimes significantly in some cases, and only did a slight retrace towards the end of the week. Same thing with the Kiwi, though. The Kiwi retraced a bit more. So I'd be looking to see if that Aussie weakness is going to continue in the market and how we can take advantage of that. That will be probably the first 24 hours of the market week will give me a pretty good idea of that. Last but not least, some parting words here. It's going to be a very fundamental week. Obviously, I'm still looking for a trend to establish itself across multiple currencies, but this week has some very key fundamentals, and the unspoken fundamental that the yen is on vacation all week. So that's going to have to be factored in. We're going to have to be very careful on keeping trades open across some of these fundamental decisions. So we'll be on the lookout for everything, trending, fundamentals, whatever. But this is a week where we have to be more careful than otherwise. And congratulations, Japan, on your new emperor. And that's it. That is the end of my presentation for this start of the week. Anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, then thank you very much. It has been a pleasure, and I shall be back tomorrow.